such a legendary place, and not least because of Piotrowski's amazing interventions. So I'd like to dedicate this presentation to a colleague, Menan Shazli, an Egyptian filmmaker who actually introduced me to Crystalism. And this is still a work in progress, so I would really welcome your comments. Okay. Crystalist conceptualism in Sudan. So Crystalism was a conceptual art movement that appeared in Sudan in the second half of 1970s, proposing a new vision of materialism and the cosmos modeled upon the properties of a crystal, seen as a passage between the finite and the infinite, while recovering sensuous perception. Now, Crystalist manifesto appeared in Khartoum's Al-Ayyam newspaper in 1976 and was signed by artists such as Hassan Abdallah, Hashim Ibrahim, and Kamala Ibrahim Ishaq. Now, it's really interesting that this Crystalist manifesto explicitly positions itself as liberal at a time when Sudan followed a version of socialism. And as you are going to see, they kind of shared at this stage an antipathy towards the dominant version of Marxism-Leninism, although the journal Al-Ayyam was actually a leftist journal, and the leftist milieu in Khartoum kind of exhibited a sign of goodwill towards Crystalists. They would say, in short, we extend an affirmation of good faith, right? So they kind of embraced or had faith in Crystalism. Okay, so I'm going to go a little bit deeper in the manifesto, and I'm going to extract a number of key themes that I think are really important. And then in a second movement, in this decolonial gesture of delinking, I'm going to advance a preposterous claim that during Polish People's Republic in the 70s, there appeared a phenomenon which might be construed as parallel to Crystalism, which I call an esoteric conceptualism, right? So bear with me. Okay, so just a few passages from the manifesto. I grouped this under a number of rubrics. So first of all, cosmos as an endless, non-contradiction, navigable through pleasure. As manifesto would have it, man himself is the endeavor and the subject of a crystal that extends endlessly within. This happens simultaneously in isolation from and in connection to other things. The universe is at once finite and infinite. Things have dual natures. And all this apparent contradiction can be only navigated not through knowledge, not through empiricism, but through pleasure. Okay, and this is where they kind of situate themselves vis-a-vis Marxism. They reject a kind of materialism that would be essentialist, right? They would say that Crystalist school is nothing other than a negation of the objectification of objects, and they align themselves with liberalism. So they would say Crystalist thought or modern liberalism is to reject the essential quality of things. Any essence is nothing but a semblance for another essence. And they would give an example of a book. A book lying before its owner is nothing but a semblance of a deeper essence, but we would here add that the same book is an essence for the semblance that surrounds it. So the crystal not only moves forward, but also extends backward. You know, they notice that with the discovery of the atom, and then later on subatomic particles and other forms of existence in cosmos, This implies existence of both the semblance of form of the crystal and the dimensions of the spectrums perceived within it. Because when you reach the subatomic particles, which you think is an essence, then the science would discover another smaller particles, so that would, disprove it. I know it's really esoteric, but bear with me. I really love this kind of thinking. Okay. So how can we navigate those contradictions? So they would introduce something that I construe as this non-anthropocentric pleasure as the sole unit of measurement. And they would say that man's essence is pleasure, and that should be the sole unit of measurement everywhere, including in the sciences, philosophy, and art. There is no other criterion. But also they made an intervention into both materialism and idealism, because they would say that both deal with quantity and accumulation as fixed realities, rather than a reality full of myriad contradictions. And they would say quantity itself, for example, the number 1, is simultaneously rational and irrational, right? Because if you take a number 1, you can divide it decimally into 3, and then you get 0.3333, and this for them is the chaos of quantity, right? So even something as stable as number is actually very chaotic. Okay, and in terms of the notion of time, they reject the notion of linear time. They would assert that from the perspective of the crystal, we assert that things produce their own time, that there is more than one time depending on the diversity and difference of nature's possibilities. The same with space. They would reject the notion of metric quantifiable space, and they would say that the thing itself exists everywhere. And so this is very resonating with Bergson's notion of intensive multiplicity that was taken up by Deleuze later on in the 1960s. And also, strangely enough, they made an appeal in the manifesto, which invites all the artists to start using the color blue. We call on the plastic artists to use the color blue, for it has great potential in showing internal dimensions and depth. In other words, it has the ability to create a crystallist vision. And we must stress that the human ability to see internal dimensions in the coral blue is not merely the result of a conditional reflex specific to the blueness of the sea and the sky, right? So it's not kind of representational use of color, but rather color as intensity. And also they conclude the manifesto with this notion of transparency. We conclude by repeating that the crystal is nothing but the denial of objectification of objects. It is infinite transparency, right? So crystal as infinitely transparent. We painted the crystal, we thought about the crystal, so the crystallist vision came to be. So there's almost kind of capacity of crystallism to affect actions at a distance, something that disturbs the linear order of time. Okay, that's really amazing program, right? But how do you make artworks that actually resonate with this very ambitious program of destroying all the coordinates of linear time and chronological with linear time and metric space? Okay, so in terms of objects, basically there are lots of performances that were using bags filled with colored water. So this is an example from 1974 or 1978. So it would be just like performance, durational performance that, there would be this bag with colored water and that would just be sitting there on a table. And similarly, Muhammad Hamid Shaddad, he created this ice block performance, which really ironically was at Abu Jinzir Gallery in Ministry of Culture, Khartoum, so it was very irreverent towards authorities. And basically, these were kind of blocks of melting ice, and they were surrounded by bags of colored water. quite recently, for the Sharjah Art Foundation, there was a recreation of this block performance. Okay, so I'm going to advance a preposterous claim that in 1970s neo-avant-garde practices in Poland, there was something that was parallel to a Crystalist conceptualism. And this is my effort to perform a decolonial delinking, right? I'm not going to use Deleuze or Guattari. I'm not going to use Peggy Phelan or all those Western thinkers to analyze performance for Polish People's Republic. Rather, I'm going to use the potential of Crystalism to account for practices and niche practices in Polish People's Republic. Okay, 3 points here. So I'm going to start with Jerzy Ludwiński, his concept of art towards, or sztuka do, and implosion art, sztuka implozywna. Okay, for Ludwiński was a theorist, but also an artist working in diagrams. So he shows the progress of development of art since 1945 and a sequence of actually 6 phases, starting from object, going through space, time, imagination, infinity, up to 0. The 0 phase happened in conceptualism, and then the whole linearity is shattered. And this is kind of modeled on this geologic thinking, because it's almost like the progressively accumulating layers of a rock. This is my translation from Ludwiński, the mountain. Art is the opposite case when compared to geology. In the latter case, that which is older is lodged more deeply. With art, at least on the surface, the same case. However, one difference here is that the most creative phenomena, those most visionary and penetrating, tend to descend underground. Indeed, one no longer speaks of the avant-garde, but the underground. The mountain of art accretes into its depths and towards its middle. That's why archaeology of art is completely different. So art is a mountain, but it's not your normal mountain. It's a mountain that has this kind of vibrant core in the middle. This, for me, really resonates with Crystalist manifesto, where we can consider the layers of the rock, which are also those different layers of art that constitute the infinite sequence, semblance, essence, semblance, essence. And also in Crystalist manifesto, we have the statement that crystal not only moves forward, but also extends backward. It moves in all directions in all space. If you will, the Crystalist school is nothing other than a negation of the objectification of objects. So for Ludwiński, if art is like a geologic formation or orogeny, it's not about objectification of those layers, because there are intensive processes that happen, right? So even though there's the accumulation of the layers, you still can move towards different, those moving cores of the mountain, which is not possible in a usual mountain, right? Because, okay, 5 minutes. I'm going to talk really briefly about Marek Konieczny's Think Crazy. I'm writing a monograph on Marek. He's a really amazing artist, and I want to pay homage to him. I want to focus on a series of what I called his contact performances between 1976 and 1985 that resonate with Crystalist performances. These are short performances that thematize the moment of contact that just happens within a fraction of a second, right? So for million pyramids, so Konieczny bouncing this kind of papier-mâché spire with his forehead. Similarly, Scepter and Chalice features this tincture glass, which is suspended on a string, and it's kind of bounces and then it kind of shatters. And this is Concentration and Ecstasy at Galeria Labyrinth, which shows Marek Konieczny suspending his feet in those colorful paints and just standing up and splashing this paint. It just takes such a short duration of time. So for me, this resonates with this idea of time as it is framed within Crystallism, right? Because there's this kind of time of the event which is different than chronological time. Okay, I don't have time now, but also I wanted to, okay, do I have to? I just wanted to say this, also with Natalia LL, she's construed as this kind of artist connected to the body and the sensuous. And I think conversely that she is a rigorous conceptualist, and this trajectory that culminated in the sensual is just only the logical outcome, right? So in her pyramid series, she considers the notion of pyramid, which fosters meditation and is also connected to the distribution of libidinal energy, right? In this series of performances, she's kind of charting those lines of the pyramid with her hands, also inviting this kind of dreaming to take place, right? So again, the Egyptian spiritual motif that was started in this panel, we kind of go back to it, but I construe it as a crystallist piece par excellence, right? And I think in conclusion, I would say that there's something to be said about this transfer of categories between art in Eastern Europe and the Global South, not only about travels of artworks and exhibitions, but also travels of thinking, right? And I would say that this is a decolonial project that is equally as important, right? I'm going to conclude. I have much more material. So if you have any questions, just please let me know. Okay, thank you.